Hey, good morning. How we doing? I hope that you are excited about this day. I'm excited about this day. We're going to get to celebrate a little bit after service, and so I'm just going to extend an invitation. If you are able to, stick around after service because we're having baptisms today. It is going to be awesome. It's one of my favorite days that we get to do. Yes, and it's going to be right up on the roof. So 10 minutes after service is over, we're going to head up to the roof and celebrate some baptisms, and maybe it's time for you to make that decision. But before I jump there, okay, before I get ahead of myself, my name is Matt. If I haven't met you before, I get to serve as the lead pastor here, and I'm excited about what God is doing at New Vintage. New Vintage is the idea behind this is that we're this new season of believers. That we're this new creation of believers, and we want to be pleasing before God. And so I'm excited about that, and we've been talking through this series called Unexpected Jesus. And last week, we got to celebrate Easter, and you want to talk about unexpected? It was unexpected, because I don't know how many people that you know that have risen from the grave and risen from death. But Jesus is one of only a couple. Lazarus was one, but Jesus did that, okay? And so we got to celebrate Easter together, and I was excited about that. And today we get to talk about one of my favorite characters in the Bible, and he experienced something very unexpected. Before we jump there, I want to talk about something that happens in a lot of our lives. Have you ever done something you regret? You can just raise your hand. Yeah. Everybody should be raising their hand. I don't know anybody that's never done anything that they regret. I've done a lot of things that I regret. I tend to, at times, act first and then think later. We talk about this at our staff all the time. We want to be ready, aim, what? Fire. But sometimes, if we're not careful, we're ready, fire, aim. Right? We're firing off, and then it's okay, I need to aim and figure out where we're going here. And I want to talk about just this guy that in America's history made a huge choice that affected tons of people. His name was General Benedict Arnold. Now, some of you know who that is. Some of you don't. He was in the American Revolutionary War. He was an American soldier, and this guy was known for his bravery. He was actually one of the most celebrated generals in the Continental Army. Like I said, he was known for his courage, his cunning, and his devotion to the American cause. So how surprised was Washington and many Americans when he made a decision that it's hard for historians to fathom? He actually planned a coup to surrender West Point to the British. And they're like, why would this guy do this? This guy that fought for America, this guy that did so much for the American people. And when his plot was discovered, George Washington, who had once trusted Arnold deeply, was devastated. Because he knew him. He was friends with him, and it wasn't just military, it was personal. Arnold fled to the enemy, and his name has become synonymous with betrayal ever since. There's moments in life that mark us. Moments that stand out in significance. Certainly for early Americans and historians, Arnold's decision left indelible impacts, right? His name became synonymous with betrayal. Maybe you feel like your life is marked with that moniker. That you've betrayed someone that you care for, that you've betrayed a company that you worked for, you've betrayed a group of people. And maybe it's okay, I wouldn't say betrayal, but man, I've just made some mistakes that I really regret. There's some words that I wish I could take back, or some things that I've done that I wish I could undo. Ever been there? I feel like all of us have in some way or another. And it can stick with us. It can become this loop in our mind that just goes over and over and replaying. We talked about this recently when we talked about winning the war in your mind, about how there's these ruts that you create. And you can have these negative ruts that if you're not careful, you just fall into over and over. For others, you feel like, I've said I'm sorry. Let's move on. Let's just get over it. You have, but others are having a harder time. Words that can't be taken back, actions that destroy trust. And sometimes, when it comes to reconciling our faith, it's where you feel like, I might have to opt out. I have to opt out, or like I've just made decisions that is going to separate me from ever being a follower of Jesus. Or like if you knew who I am, who I am and who I was and the things that I've done in my life, like you wouldn't welcome me in here. It's one of the things that I love about the Bible. There's so much humanity as you read God's word. Throughout, being in ministry over the last 25 years, I'll have someone say, like, Matt, you don't know what I've done. You don't know the choices that I have made. When I was in Simi Valley, our security team told me that there was a guy out in the street. He was out in our parking lot. And they said, hey, would you go and talk to this guy? I was like, yeah, absolutely. I'd go out. And this guy has tattoos all over his face. I mean, he is ripped, almost as ripped as I am. I mean, he was a stud. Yeah. Thank you. And I walked out to this guy and I was like, hey man, how's it going? He's like, hey. And I was like, hey, what's your name? He told me his name. I said, hey, what's your story? You want to come in? He's like, I want to, but I just can't. And I said, well, talk to me about why. And he said, well, exactly what we talked about. If you'd known the things that I've done, if you know who I am, do you see these tattoos? I was like, yeah, I see your tattoos, and I know what some of your tattoos mean. I said, but listen, the good news about the gospel is that all people are called into a relationship with Jesus. And it's not because of what we've done, it's because of who he is. And today, I want to talk about a guy that unexpectedly received God's grace in an incredible way. And it's around Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection. Peter was one of those people. And some of you, when I say Peter, you're like, oh man, I know who you're talking about. I know some of Peter's story. I know a little bit about Peter's life. And others are like, man, I've never heard of Peter before. Peter, originally, was named Simon. Simon, son of John. And we'll hear about that in just a little bit. But his name was Simon. And a lot of times when people came to a monumental moment in their faith, when they followed a rabbi or they made this transition in their lives, they would be renamed. And Simon has this experience. He starts following Jesus, and Jesus says, Simon, you are now Peter. In the Greek, that's Petros. And it literally means the rock. And he says, upon you I will build my church. But I guarantee you, shortly during the crucifixion and after, Peter wasn't sure about that. Because Peter was one of Jesus' closest disciples. He was known for being passionate, of being bold and deeply committed. And like Peter was the guy who, when Jesus was walking across the water and they were in the boat, Peter's the guy that's like, Jesus, if that's you, call me out. I want to walk on water too. Now, a lot of times, here's what we know about that story. That Jesus says, come on out, Peter. And so Peter starts walking on the water, and then he looks around. And he gets scared, and he starts to sink. And so a lot of us know the story around Peter and walking on water is like Peter lost faith, and he began to sink. But here's the thing I always like to remind myself of and remind others of. Peter got out of the boat. Like Peter got out of the boat. All the other disciples, all the other people were sitting in the safety of the boat, and they're like, I'm not getting out there. Peter got out. He declared Jesus as the Messiah. He was one of the first, even swearing that he would never leave his side. Despite all the passion, Peter also made mistakes. In fact, it's his passion that got him into trouble. Because in the garden, before Jesus was taken to trial, like I said, that Jesus told Peter, he's like, hey, you're going to betray me. In fact, everybody's going to leave me. And Peter is like, listen, even if everybody else leaves you, even if everybody else betrays you, even if I'm the only one, I'll never do it. I'll never betray you. And Jesus says to Peter, before the rooster crows tonight, you'll betray me 3 times. And Peter's like, no way, there's no way that would happen. In fact, a little bit later, when the Roman guards and the chief priests come to arrest Jesus, Peter is the guy that pulls out his sword. He's like, let's go. Like ready, fire, aim. Like he's just ready to go forward. And it's one of those things that, like I said, like if it's not careful, it's easy to criticize. But Peter was passionate about his relationship with Jesus. Peter suddenly comes face to face with what Jesus had talked about. In John 13:38, Jesus answered, will you really lay down your life for me? Very truly, I tell you, before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. And again, Peter's like, there is no way that that's going to happen. And again, I love, like I said earlier, the Bible because it's so relatable, it's so human. Because anybody else ever been passionate about something and you're like, listen, I'm in. I'm sold out. I'm about this. And maybe it's a week, maybe it's a month, maybe it's a little while down the road, you find yourself compromising on the things that you once said you would never do. The Bible is so human. In fact, Chuck Colson, an apologist, said this. He says, the Bible is not a book that flatters its heroes. It tells the truth about them. That's one of the reasons I believe it's the Word of God, because it's so honest of the flaws in the people in it. It's true, isn't it? Like if you read through the Gospels, if you read through the Bible, you'll see imperfect person after imperfect person after imperfect person. And I don't know about you, but if I had a book of the Bible named Matthew, there's a book of the Bible named Matthew, I would write it different. I would be like, Matt was a stud upon studs. He towered 6'5". He was a warrior for Jesus. Like he never messed up. He did everything right. Yeah, I like whoever said that. But I'm not. And I know I'm not. And the disciples knew that they weren't, and they wove this into the New Testament, the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, which is a testament of Jesus' time on earth. And apologists and people throughout history are like, nobody does that. Everybody rewrites history to make it look favorable in their behalf. But this isn't what happened. This isn't what happens in the Gospels. Even in the midst of the most miraculous moment in history, people are open and honest about their flaws. Speaking of which, I was talking with a guy about this last week. He's going to remain nameless to preserve and protect his name. But we were talking about this, about how this came out to play in the book of John, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. John is talking about when Jesus rose from the grave, and the women came and they told the disciples, and it says that Peter and the one that Jesus loved. Okay, right there, there's a little bit of humor there, because this was John writing this about John. Like he's the one that Jesus loved, and he's like, I know I'm the favorite, and he's like, Peter and the other disciple that Jesus loves took off for the tomb, and the other disciple got there first. Like he's like, I smoked Peter. Peter, the guy that's like, all head first and no brakes, like I beat him. It's so human when we read in the gospel these accounts. And John isn't known for being outspoken like Peter is. Peter's probably a little bit irritated. And here's the thing, like I said, if the disciples were fabricating a story, they wouldn't have painted themselves as cowardly, doubtful, or failing. The honesty is a part of the authenticity. The honesty is a part of the authenticity. I doubted, I made mistakes, I messed up, and yet I still trusted in Jesus. In fact, apologists and historians to this day will talk about the disciples. They're like, anyone willing to live for a Messiah before he died is something that a lot of people did at that time. But someone after that Messiah supposedly rose from the grave, being convinced of it so much that they were willing to die horrible deaths, you never see that. You never see that, yet we see that in the Bible. And I imagine being Peter, not just failing, but failing the one that you love the most. Because he does deny Christ. He's standing around a fire, and Jesus is over here being accused, and someone around the fire is like, hey, aren't you a follower of that Jesus guy that's on trial over there? And he's like, no, not me. He's like, no, I saw you. I know you were one of the people that followed him. And he's like, listen, I have no idea what you're talking about. And again, it happens, and the rooster crows, and the account says that Jesus looks at Peter. Can you imagine the feeling in that moment? Jesus has said, Peter, you're going to betray me. Peter's like, no way. There's no way I will betray you. And then in that moment, he betrays Jesus the third time. The rooster crows. Jesus looks at him. They lock eyes. Imagine how Peter must have felt. Maybe it doesn't take a lot of imagination for you. Because maybe there was a time where you followed Jesus and you're like, Jesus, I'm sold out for you. I'm going all in, and you found yourself drifting. Or maybe you know the amount of times that you've denied Jesus in your life and you're like, hey, I'm giving this church thing a chance. We're so glad you're here because we believe that this is good news. And we believe that Jesus showed up in unexpected ways in Peter's life, and he wants to show up in unexpected ways in your life too. Let's go to John chapter 21. Jesus has risen from the grave. He meets them again, this time on the shore after they've been out fishing. So Jesus is crucified. He's in the tomb. He rises from the dead. And a lot of the disciples, they're like, okay, they're trying to figure out what's next. And so Simon is a fisherman. And so he goes out fishing with some of the other disciples. And they're out fishing and they're not catching anything. And this guy cries out from the shore. He's like, hey, how's it going? Catch anything? Don't you love it when people do that if you're a fisherman? Because it's like none of your business. And it can be none of your business because I caught a lot, or it can be none of your business because more normally, no, I haven't caught anything. And the guy from the shore, who was Jesus, by the way, is like, throw your nets on the other side. Throw your nets on the other side of the boat. And they throw the nets on the other side of the boat, and they get such a huge haul, it says that they can't pull the nets in. They're so overloaded with fish. And John, who's in the boat, realizes that it's Jesus on the shore. And he starts spreading the word in the boat. He's like, it's Jesus, that's Jesus. And Peter pulls a Peter. Like, I love it. Like, Peter's not done yet. So he's like, hey, that's Jesus. Jesus is on the shore. They're out in the boat. I don't know how far out in the boat from the shore they are, but here's what Peter does. He gets his other cloak, he throws it on, and he jumps in the water. And he starts swimming for shore. And it says that, like everybody else in the boat, like, took care of all of Peter's work, and they got into the shore behind Peter. And they eat breakfast. Jesus has this fire there, and there's some fish and some bread. And they begin to have breakfast, and then Jesus turns to Peter and he says, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Can you imagine what Peter was thinking in that moment? Because he had just betrayed Jesus. He had just denied Jesus 3 times. And I'm sure in his excitement that he was excited about being with and close and near to Jesus, and at the same time, he was probably a little scared of how things were going to go. You ever been in one of those places? I mean, I have. Because there's times in my life where I've ready, fire, aimed, and I make a mistake and I hurt somebody. And in hurting people, a lot of times for me, because I care deeply about people, like I'll run to them. And what I'm really asking is, where do we stand? Where do we stand? Are we good? Are we okay? And so Jesus says, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than this? He calls him Simon, son of John, instead of Peter. Do you notice that? D.A. Carlson says, Jesus does not address him as Peter, the rock, but as Simon, perhaps gently reminding him of what he was when he first called him. Instead of calling him the rock, and I'm sure Peter was feeling like anything but the rock in that moment, he goes back to the beginning and calls him Simon, son of John. He's intentionally taking Peter back to square one, not to shame him, but to reground him in his identity. It's like saying, okay, let's reset. Let's start over. Let's go back. This is Peter's pivotal moment. Jesus says, do you love me? And he says, so Peter responds, yes, Lord. You know that I love you. Jesus says, feed my lambs. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He answered, yes, Lord. You know that I love you. Jesus said, take care of my sheep. I'm sure at this moment, Peter is like, man, this is really uncomfortable. This is getting really uncomfortable because he's asked me, I've responded. He's asking me again, does he doubt me? Because I doubt myself. You're going to talk about relatable. He's questioning things, and it says, the third time Jesus says to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And I'm sure at that moment that Peter was like, 3 times. Like the 3 times around that other charcoal fire, I denied you. Here I am, around another fire, being restored. Simon, son of John, do you love me? It says Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the 3rd time, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Jesus says, feed my sheep. And here's what sometimes it would be easy to miss because there's so much emotion within the story. Jesus doesn't shame him. He doesn't throw Peter's past in his face. He doesn't say, then Peter, why did you deny me just recently? Why did you deny me around that group of other people? You said you love me, but you don't love me. He doesn't do that. Jesus instead asks him 3 times, taking him back to his 3 denials, restoring each one of those moments, calling him to action. Here's what we missed that's clear in the Greek. When you read through the Greek of this account, Jesus says, Simon, which is Peter, Simon, son of John, do you agapeo me? Do you love me with this highest selfless love? In fact, agapeo means to love unconditionally, sacrificially, and selflessly. It is a willful, committed, and active love, not based on feelings, but on a choice to seek the best for others. And Jesus is saying, Simon, son of John, do you love me with a selfless love? It's active, it's committed. And here's how Peter responds, because we read, do you love me? And Peter's like, yeah, I love you. But in the Greek, Peter responds, Lord, you know I phileo you. Phileo is a Greek word that means affectionate, brotherly love, the kind shared between close friends or family. It implies deep emotional connection, fondness, and loyalty. See a little bit of difference there? Jesus is like, do you agapeo me? Do you agapeo me? And Peter's like, yeah, I phileo you. And so Jesus goes back and he's like, hey, Simon, do you agapeo me? And Peter is not going to overpromise again. He's learned, but Jesus doesn't shame his humble answer. And it could have happened, right? He could have said, do you agapeo me? And Peter's like, I phileo you. And he's like, no, do you agapeo me? You've denied me before. Are you going to deny me again? He doesn't do that. He gently calls him back. And here's what happens the third time. Instead of Jesus saying, hey, Simon, Peter, do you agapeo me? He says, Simon, do you phileo me? Are you willing to love me as a brother? See, Jesus comes to where Peter is, not to lower the standard, but to lift Peter back up. And this was not what was expected. Thinking culturally, in Jewish culture, restoration and accusation were not private. They were public things that happened. In fact, we talked about the prodigal son not too long ago, and we talked about this idea of kazazah. And it was when the whole community would come out and they would throw down these clay pots and they would be like, you don't belong. You are not welcome here. This is not a part of your community any longer. And we talked about how the father said, no, this is not going to happen. I want to restore the prodigal son. This is reflected in the restoration of Peter. Jesus meets him where he is in his brokenness and in his shame and commissions Peter again. Feed my lambs. Take care of my sheep. Feed my sheep. Peter, you are Petros. You are the rock. Upon you I will build my church. You are not disqualified. You are called. Don't let the mistake ruin your calling that I am calling you to. Instead, walk in me. These are not just cute metaphors. In Jewish tradition, shepherding language is deeply theological. God is called the shepherd of Israel in Psalm 23. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Leaders are called to shepherd the flock in Jeremiah 3:15. Peter could have ended up like Benedict Arnold. Wouldn't it have been easy? Wouldn't it have been easy to be known as the betrayer, to be known as the one that fell short? And if it would have been up to us, that's probably how we would have labeled him. Probably how we would have labeled ourselves. But Jesus doesn't treat Peter as a pariah, but restores him to his purpose. And that's the business that Jesus is in. Restoring people to their purpose, restoring them to the calling and relationship with him. Jesus is saying, Peter, I'm not just forgiving you, I'm putting you back in the game. You're still my guy. You still have a calling. I don't know about you, but there's times that I've needed to hear that in my life. You aren't cut off. You're not cast out. You're not a disappointment. But you belong. You're my child. You're my son. In other words, your failure doesn't define you, Jesus does. Isn't that good news? Your failure doesn't define you, Jesus does. It's not by your works that anyone's saved. It is the grace of God solely and fully. Your past doesn't disqualify you, it prepares you. And listen, I'm going to tell you, as the church, I desire for us to be a church that goes through hard times and that we come around one another and we support each other and that we encourage each other, because our past doesn't disqualify us, it prepares us. Some of the greatest lessons that I've learned in my life are times that I've gone through hardships. Times where I've learned to persevere. Church, let's be a people, a community that perseveres through hard times. That when hard times don't come, we're not like, God's not there, I'm out. But that we lean in instead of leaning away. And your weakness isn't the end. It's a place where grace restores you. Your weakness isn't the end. It's a place where grace restores you. My grace is sufficient for you. It's made perfect in your weakness. And that's good news. Because like I've said, I don't know about you, but like as much as a 6'5" stud that I am, right? You remember the book of Matthew? Just kidding, okay? But there's so many places where I know that I fall short. There's so many times where I've hurt a friendship or a relationship or where I've done something at work and maybe it's out of a really good heart, but I've just said it a little too strong or a little bit too loud. And it's so good to know that I'm not disqualified, but that we're called to walk in our purpose. And you need to know that you are not either. You may have had a 3 denial kind of story. A season of walking away now that has now become a shame loop that just goes over and over in your head. And you find it hard to break out of that because you know, well, I made that mistake and that therefore I can't walk with him. Maybe 3 would be a lot better than the number of times that you feel like you've turned your back on or denied God. But don't miss it. Jesus shows up and acts in unexpected ways in Peter's life, and he wants to act in unexpected ways in your life too. So listen, if you don't hear anything else, I want you to hear this today. That Jesus reclaims you from your shame. He restores you with his grace, and he recommissions you with a purpose. That Jesus reclaims you from your shame. He's reclaimed it. It's not because of you being good enough, it's because he is good enough. He restores you with his grace. My grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. And he recommissions you. Get back in the fight. And guys, that is part of what we are as New Vintage Church. We believe in resurrection stories, not just on Easter, but each and every day that people give their lives to him. We've seen Jesus reclaim marriages, restore people from addiction, recommission leaders who thought they were too far gone. Failure doesn't get the final word. Your story isn't stuck. You're not disqualified. Jesus calls us gently back to a relationship and a mission with him. And Peter's story is an unexpected way that Jesus shows grace and an unexpected way that sometimes we look at the Bible and we're like, I could never be like that. We are just like that. It's not neat. It's not safe. It's not always what we expect, but it's what we need. And you aren't too far gone either. You are invited back to the table. And maybe there's a person in this room that specifically needs to hear that today. To sit around the fire. Like, I just imagine what that must have been like for Peter. Here I am around another charcoal fire. And I'm being called back to a relationship instead of walking away. You are invited to that table. And maybe if you're ready to say yes to Jesus again, listen, here's what I'm going to encourage you to today. Don't wait. We're going to have a prayer team that's going to be up here in just a minute. Man, come up. Get them to pray. Don't wait. We talked about camp. I'm going to tell you, if you have a student or you are a student, you need to go to camp. We spend all kinds of money and resources getting tutors and making sure our kids get the right athletic direction so that they can probably get to high school and maybe college and do a little bit. And for some, listen, one of the kids in my student ministry, he's playing for the Oakland A's right now. He is doing incredible in the major league. But here is what he knows. If my relationship with Jesus is not solid, it's worth nothing. One of the other kids in our youth group is playing for the Chargers. He's a tight end. He's incredible. His name is Colby Parkinson. He looks a lot like me. Doesn't look anything like me. But he's an incredible young man that is incredibly passionate about Jesus. You can have all the accolades, the success, the money, the fortune, the fame, and be bankrupt. Jesus calls us to relationship with him, and he wants to invite you. So don't wait. Come up, pray with some people. We're going to celebrate baptisms. Listen, we have a group of people that are going to be baptized. It's not too late. If you're saying, hey, Matt, I want to be baptized today, we have water. Let's do it. Let's celebrate new life in him. It's your moment to say, I'm all in, Jesus. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what we do when we do baptisms. I take your confession. It's simple. It's not tricky. It's not magical. It's not magical on my part. It's magical on God's part, his grace. That God so loved the world that he sent his only son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life. For God didn't send his son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. So we simply say, hey, listen, repeat after me. I believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, and I now accept him as my personal Lord and Savior. I want to follow him. I want to be called back to relationship with him. Listen, if that is you today, don't wait. Because God's calling you to relationship. He's calling you to restoration. He's calling you. You're not disqualified. You're recommissioned to walk with him. So let's celebrate new life today. Let's celebrate life in him. Let's celebrate the abundance that's found in Jesus. And right now we're going to go into a time of communion where we celebrate that gift. We celebrate that Jesus willingly went to the cross for our sins. And there's going to be some trays passed, and there's going to be 2 cups together. On the bottom is some bread. You can just grab a stack if you want to take communion with us. If you're new and you're like, I'm not sure about this, you can let the tray pass. But on the bottom, there's some bread, and it represents Jesus' body broken for us. And there's some juice on the top that represents Jesus' blood spilled for us, so that we didn't have to be good enough, but that we could come to relationship by restoration through him. That's what communion is about. So as we take some time to celebrate communion together, I want to encourage you. Do you think you're too far gone? Do you think you can't be restored? You can. It's right here in God's words. He wants to show up in unexpected ways in your life. Do you feel like you've accepted him and you're walking with him, but like you've just messed up too much to be a part of what God is doing? He's commissioning you. He's calling you to a life abundant, and a life living and active in him. So don't miss it. Let's take communion together now.